I'm Benji Anderson, and welcome to Spiked Up.
Hey there, Colorado track and field fans. Welcome to this week's edition of Spiked Up. As always, I'm Bobby Reyes, and I'm going to be your host. All right, let's be honest. Winter returned this week, as it usually does this time of the year. Multiple meets were canceled. Some actually did get off the starting line, but big on this week's edition of Spiked Up is we've got a special guest on tap. We're going to talk about a few things that we saw around the state that is pretty exciting right now. All right, here we are. We are spiked up with Lauren Cawley. We decided to take this week's interview inside because last week was a little bit windy. Lauren is a contributor to the Strata Report. We've kind of been working together for the last handful of years, and so she's also a sub 60 quarter miler. So I thought I would ask her the question here before we start talking about the girls 400. What does it take to run a good four?
Yeah, I haven't run a sub 60 in 3 years now, but the 400 is one of those races where it seems so simple because it's a sprint, but if you don't come in with a solid race plan, it's really hard to succeed. And one thing that I learned is even though it's not, a 60, a 100, a 200, you really do need to perfect your start. The way that you position yourself in the first 100 meters of that race can make or break everything. So my first tip is focus on your block start, get out, go full out that first 100. And then the backstretch, I like to use the term float. You're not necessarily slowing down, you're not necessarily speeding up, but you want to feel comfortable. It's not going to feel the same as an all-out 200, but you also want to come through that 200 fast. It might not be a 200 PR, but you have to feel comfortable so that you're not getting to that 200 mark and you're like, okay, I still have half this race and I'm burnout. So stay comfortable, float through the backstretch. And then for me, once I get through that first 200, it's kind of all about keeping your form straight and focusing on getting to the finish. That's kind of whatever you got left in the tank. It always started to really hurt for me with 150 to go. Yeah, and the only thing that's going through my mind at that time is like just get to the finish and keep upright and yeah, mind on the finish line. But that first 200, you really need to perfect that strategy and make sure you get out in that first 100.
On the topic of mind on the finish line, we're going to look at some of these girls' rankings here. Currently leading the state is Annalena Torres with a 55.96. Currently, she's the only one who's broken 56 this year. Third at state last year. She's already ahead of where she was last year, which I feel like is very impressive because it's early April. So that's kind of she's in a really good spot right now. And kind of what I feel like what's exciting about her so far is last year she saved her best for last. She PR'd at state, so she's already run 55.96. If she kind of follows last year's plan, that means that she's on pace to PR at state. So she's kind of looking really good right now.
Yeah, and then you have Ellie Londo, who opened up with a 56.37. She did win the 100 last year at state, and she didn't compete in the 400, but she did run a season best of 55.74 at Liberty Bell. So already starting off in early April with 56, we'll see what she has left in the tank for the rest of the season.
What's exciting with Ellie too is, she was more of a 100, 200 girl. I feel like, or at least that's kind of been her strength, but kind of stepping up into the 400, which there's another runner who we're going to come to later that's also done that. That means that makes her competitive in the 400 at state as well as someone who's run, mid 56 already.
Right. And then Abigail Trapp, she won state last year as a freshman. She's already run 56.50 this season, defending 4A state champ. Her PR from last year was 55.05. That is a fast freshman time. So yeah, her already running 56 mid this early. I will be very interested to see what she can do, especially after coming off that state title as a freshman.
Yeah. What's exciting too with her is one runner comes to mind in terms of winning freshman as a state, particularly running that fast, and that's Aria Minor, who is the state record holder of the 100, the 200, and the 400. So Abigail Trapp already kind of on track to dominate, for 4 years is super impressive. Um, and one runner, one sprinter, I wanted to kind of this is almost like a introducing, but I'm gonna call on the rise. Meets Riley Klatt. A year ago, she was a 59-second quarter miler, and she was mostly a 100 meter, 2 meter sprinter, kind of like Ellie. She ran a 56.68 last week at Niwot. She won heat 11 out of 12, so she wasn't even in the fast heat, and gets second overall, but huge PR. It's a big jump. What I'm curious now is the confidence booster that has. I feel like when athletes make a big jump, a lot of times it's accidental. They don't even plan to run that fast. They just kind of do. So what that means for her moving forward, like I would imagine there's a lot of confidence right now moving forward in terms of like running a little bit faster. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what she does in the coming weeks.
Yeah, the expectation that's put on you when you randomly PR by a couple seconds, especially in a race like the 400, is crazy. Like coming into that next race, knowing like, okay, like, I had that crazy PR, but can I do it again? Is the question. Sometimes you see 400 runners or just sprinters in general have these big PRs and maybe they aren't able to hit it again. So that expectation can really get to you. But as long as you keep that mindset of like, I did it once, I have the ability to do it and I will do it again. You just have to, mental strength is everything, especially with a strategic race like this. So,
It's kind of like Rosie Macharski said in last week's edition of Spiked Up. She said, pressure is privilege. And I thought that was one of the most like insightful, like philosophical lines I think I've ever heard in reference to racing. About just, obviously the better you run, the more pressure you have, but that's kind of a privilege. It comes with the territory. So before we move on to one other event, I got to ask, sub 60, you mentioned you haven't run it in a few years. Could you hang with any of these ladies now?
um, I don't know. It's hard to think if I could even like if I just went and spiked up right now and tried to run a 400, like I don't even know if I could break 70 is the question.
Maybe
Or
we,
if I did break 70, would I get hurt?
yeah,
Like because I had a really bad injury in college that potentially could still be not healed. So I'm wondering if like maybe I could run a decent time, but would I come away from it not injured?
maybe that's the question is how long of a recovery would it take?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. I would like to think I could drop like a 66, 65, but I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself there.
I'll go ahead and say I don't stand a chance. I think I would tear an Achilles if I even attempted to try to run faster than 75 seconds.
Yeah.
One more event I really want to talk about is the 4x1, boys 4x1, Mountain Vista 41:13 last week at Niwot. That's the second fastest time in Colorado, a nationally number 41, um, currently leading state. What are your thoughts on this running so fast so early?
Yeah, with the state record being 40:59, I definitely don't think it's out of reach. Kind of like you said, they're running so fast so early, and there's so much room for improvement in a 4x1. If you can perfect the leadoff start, if you can perfect handoffs, like the 4x1 is so much about technique that if they can run a perfect race with no fail, it's not completely out of the question for them to break that record, even though a half second is a lot of time.
Yeah, I kind of feel like when you're talking about 40 seconds, a half second is a lot of time. But what's kind of like, I feel like hopeful is the fact that like they ran this like late March, still 7 weeks in the season. So the question is, how much can they clean up in the next 6 weeks now? Because Grandview ran that state record a couple of years ago, even. Which, yeah, that's another thing that's interesting is the 4x1, the 4x2, the 4x4, and the 4x8 state records have all fallen in the last like 2 to 3 years. And here we are again talking about a potential state record falling. Half seconds a lot of time, but with you know cleaning up a little bit of little things here and there, I feel like it's possible because it's so early.
Yeah, for sure.
And so now I want to move into kind of like me the last section here. This is Bobby on the hot seat. I prompted people on Instagram to ask me some questions since I knew that there'd be snow and ice and most likely cancellations, and got a handful of very strange but some pretty good questions. And so we're gonna have Lauren here read some of these off, and then I'll answer them.
Yeah, you can always count on no context for those questions.
Very, very true.
First one's normal. What team has the strongest 1600 runners?
Okay, so I feel like the stats kind of speak for themselves on this one. This is not, I feel like, something that's subjective. This is very objective. Right now, it's looking like the Nike Cross National Champions NIWAD. They've got four boys under 424 and two under 420. It's going to be very exciting to see if they put together a 4 by mile later in the season, because you're looking at a pretty quick overall time if you got all of those guys on the line. So right now, it looks like NIWAD boys.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of Mountain Vista's number two all-time Colorado 4x1?
So we did just touch on this. I'm just going to say this is pretty beastly. 4113 this early in particular is very, very impressive. That's legit. It's I feel like the combination of being that fast and this early is what makes it super impressive.
I like this question. What's the worst haircut you've ever had?
Okay, this one is probably hard to imagine, but I shaved my head once. So I can't say it was a haircut per se because no one cut my hair. I cut my own hair. It was my freshman year of college, and I don't really know what I was thinking, but I went to Walmart, bought some clippers, and just came back to my bathroom. Had a couple of friends who did not believe that I was going to do it because I had shaggy hair. Just went straight down the middle and owned it, and I regret it.
I think if Mount Vista breaks the 4x1 state record, you have to get a buzz cut.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm never gonna make that
Let
bet.
me know what you guys think for that one. Okay, next, what's your background and how did you get into this line of work?
So I will say I did answer this question last week in last week's edition of Spiked Up. So if you want to get the answer to that question, just go ahead and backtrack to last week and watch that one.
Do you use Herbal Essence shampoo?
I do not use Herbal Essence as shampoo. I actually wash my hair with soap. Um,
Soap?
no, that's a joke. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't even know the name of the shampoo that I use.
All right. What's your go-to move in the middle of a dance circle?
So this one, I'm gonna call it "Put Out the Fire" and it's on people's feet. I don't know how I started this, but when people are dancing on the floor, I have a tendency to go and kind of like I'm putting on a fire on their feet, like they're dancing so hot that I've got to put out. I don't know the origin of it. I just know that I've been to a handful of weddings and been doing that move. So
I have to see that for sure.
yeah.
What would you choose as as the title of your memoir?
So I feel like this is my favorite question. And this is why this is the last one that I put up. Um, and I have a few titles, and they're all double entendres. The one is called The Eighth Rule, and if you know, you know, which I would imagine most people don't. It's I'll just say it's related to a book, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And the second title I have is called Lotus Flower, and that's another one of these double entendres that is related to something else. It's actually related to a song. So, yeah, I'm not going to explain much more except that whenever I do come out with a memoir, it's going to be completely loaded in terms of the title, meaning like multiple things.
Okay, I like it. That is
Um,
what we got for questions.
yeah, that's what we have for questions this week. We're going to be doing this every week. So next week I will be at the Pomona Invitational, but I'll likely put something on Instagram as well. So if people want to put their questions in, they can definitely do that. And we'll do this every week until everyone knows me way too well. But Lauren,
The
thank you so
people
much.
love you, Bobby.
Lauren, thank you so much for jumping on this week. It was great kind of diving into some stuff. Um, and so
Thanks for having me.
sure. And we'll tap it there. Cool.
All right.
All right, that about wraps up this week's edition of Spiked Up. As always, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel to keep up with what's going on across the entire state of Colorado. Just want to give a special shout out to all of those who did put questions in for this week's edition of Bobby on the Hot Seat. Had a good laugh at quite a few of those. Next week, we've got a few different things coming. But hey, it was a bit of a quiet week here in Colorado, but we've got some chaotic weeks in front of us. We've got Liberty Bell this Friday and Saturday, which I will be there. So make sure you bring your questions because we're going to keep this going all season long. Once again, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the track.
Doing it all for you, my Lewis. I'm just getting started. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. So I show you spark. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. I'm just getting started. Doing it all for you, my Lewis. So I show you spark. I'm doing it all for you, my Lewis.
All right, here we are. We are spiked up.
Wait. Sorry. There's a clock at the top and it says time left 10 minutes.
Okay, let's roll.